this and that and what the fuck else, episode 162. Over the past few days I've done a lot of single topic videos and I have fallen behind on the news collections that I do. But before we go, let's take a trip to Russia. Malaya Korelia is an open-air museum located near Arkhangelsk in North Russia. Originally created as a museum of wooden architecture, over time it has become a cultural center, preserving material and spiritual heritage. The buildings, the oldest of which dates back to the 16th century, were carefully dismantled in their villages and hamlets and transported to a designated site to be fully reconstructed for preservation for future generations. Architects and carpenters, restorers have done a magnificent job. Good quality peasant houses, churches, mills, in logs of which there are no nails. All this you can see, following the guide and listening to his fascinating stories about peasant life or just walking around the museum. Folk festivals, exhibitions, master classes, games for school children. This is Malaya Korelia. The Russian North remembers and cherishes its past. Enjoy the slideshow and think. This is Russia. That is amazing. I would really like to go there. I would like to see that, but that's a dream. Before I start with the news, I need to share this with you. Of course, I've got a lot of really fantastic followers, and I have people that are supporting the channel financially, and I appreciate that. And in the description below the video is a link. If you're a South African, you can support the channel. The reality of what I'm doing, sometimes I don't think people fully understand. The amount of news snips and clips and videos that I check in a day to do what I do is enormous. And obviously, I'm seeing horrible things, really horrible things, which I don't share because I don't see any sense in sharing that. It is just too ugly. Sometimes I'll make a reference to it or so, but I'm not going to give you details on it. And I'm also quite reluctant to play video clips, because I've got a problem with the channel and with the platform, is that many of these clips gives me a copyright strike, and that has got a negative effect on the channel. And then I get a lot of wonderful messages and emails and comments that inspire me, and the comments let me know that there are people that are appreciating what I'm doing. But on the other hand, I also get critique. And I'm not a guy that is scared of critique. You need critique if you want to grow. But shoo, some people, they assume they know what I think, they assume they know what my views are, they make assumptions about things of me that I don't know where the hell they get the right from to do that, and they call me names, and I just ask myself, if that is your way of talking to a guy that you actually don't know, that you know nothing about, how are you treating the people that's got to live with you? I am trying to imagine some of the messages I get, and I read the message and I think to myself, but this guy's got a wife and he's got children, and so what is it like to live in a house with him? What is it like to work in the same office as he? What would it be like to travel in a car with this man? So, yes, comments are welcome. But as I've said it many times in many of my Skidmarks, respect is something that has become a scarce commodity in our daily lives. And we can see the effects of lack of respect all over us. You know, when you see people going into the streets and they start, the protest turns into a riot, then you can see how respect disappears when the destruction takes over. But we are living in dangerous times. And here in South Africa specifically, I don't think there's many people that fully realize that we can very easily get involved in a serious clash between, let's say, BRICS and the G7. And that is a reality. And I'm going to do a skidmark about it again tomorrow, just for interest sake. It is past midnight. It is the 19th of June, and it is just before 1 o'clock in the morning. We've just gone. The time just flies. And what is happening currently in the world is, for me, yes, it's exciting to see it, but it's going to be dangerous. That's all I'm going to say about that. Let's get to the news. And we start off with our own Cyril Ramaphosa. President Cyril Ramaphosa's office says the BRICS summit will be held in Joburg, although there is speculation that it may be moved to China. Now that speculation is what it is, speculation. The reality is that the main battle at this point in our lives are between BRICS and the G7. And there's nothing that you must assume about that thing, because both sides has got their own agendas. I am afraid that South Africa is going to be caught between the tire and the rim. Then we have this. South Africa knows it may be sanctioned by the US. South Africa is aware that it's on the verge of being punished by the United States for its non-aligned stance in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Gowan Whittles, a senior South African journalist, has told RT. Whittles said that Pretoria has taken seriously a warning by Stanlib Asset Management that the country could lose up to $32.4 billion in export revenue due to its non-aligned position on the Ukraine conflict. Now I read something like that and I actually get angry, because this is what the West has been doing, the Americans specifically, been doing to the whole world for the past 80 years. When they don't like something that you do, they sanction you. And I have got first-hand experience of it. They sanctioned my country. They sanctioned South Africa because of the government we had. And not for a moment did any commentator make any mention of the reality that the sanctions are destroying lives of the citizens, the politicians. Sanctions never touch them. That is the reality. And now we have this situation. They're threatening us with the AGOA agreement. that is going to affect a lot of our farmers, specifically our farmers. And I did a skid mark on that. My question is, the political and civil organizations in South Africa, representing the various interest groups, they should have known that this problem is going to come up. The SPIEF conference has just closed in St. Petersburg. And my question, and I asked it on Twitter, and I didn't get a reply. My question is, how many South African delegations was in St. Petersburg? And I'm going to leave it there. And then we have this interesting tidbit. Megan S. asks, why should Cele turn to China when we have solutions and people capable of bringing about change? Becky Cele and his corrupt top dogs must be fired along with the corrupt SAPS members. All officers and members in SAPS must be strictly South African only. And this is based on, apparently Cele, that is the South African Minister of Police, took a trip to China to go and find out from them how do they make their police system work. And what this commentator said is true. And all of us know that the police service is plagued by corruption. But Cele is the minister and he's not capable of that portfolio. But who must we thank? Cyril. Then we have this, also from Megan S. How do they all manage to stay out of jail? Citizens are locked up for stealing. It's about time we start seeing some of these cadres and the thieving politicians in orange overalls. And it was on this judgment, Batabile Dlamini to repay SASSA millions spent on private security. That was the minister in charge of the SASSA. And apparently she had a good time there. And then we go to the Donbass, and a lot of the Ukraine supporters and Russia haters have got a lot to say about how Russia operates and this and that. And they've got a lot to say about the illegal invasion and how the citizens suffers under the Russians. Now, this is a piece of news from one of the oblasts that had a referendum and decided that they want to be part of Russia. Russian region recognizes Ukrainian as an official language. The governor of Russia's Kherson region has announced that Ukrainian and Crimean Tatar can be used as official languages in the region, alongside with Russian. On Sunday, Vladimir Zaldu said Russian citizens have the right to free choice of language in communication, upbringing, culture, and art. Safeguarding people's cultural, spiritual, and historical values is among the priorities for the government in Kherson region and more broadly across Russia, Zaldu said in Telegram's post, where he published a text of his decree on the use of official languages. Under the ruling, public officials and government agencies can choose any of the three languages for official communications. The region's population can also choose freely, file requests with public officials in any of the three languages, and request an answer in the same language. Now, you must take note of this, because this Zazi supporters has got a different story. But the reality is that Ukraine government has outlawed Russian. They're destroying and outlawing Russian culture, everything. And this is what the Russians do. Think about that. And then we get to South Africa and our famous Minister of Electricity, the Prince of Darkness. Chris Hatang says, If only Eskom and government had been aware of this before. Electricity Minister Ramokgopa said, sabotage at Eskom is of grave concern and catastrophic proportions with highly organized attempts at undermining the country's electricity supply. And very recently, shortly after he was appointed, he stood at a power station and he said he can see no corruption and he sees no criminal activity. And here we have it. And then we go to the EU, and here's that Annalena Dambak again. Baerbock asked to call leopards not German, but Ukrainian. Understand, it doesn't matter where it's made. You don't say about your iPhone, but it's American. You say that it is yours. It is the same story with tanks. Sorry, Annalena, they are German tanks given to Ukraine. They're trying to be clever with words. And then there's this interesting photograph from the Middle East. The tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa skyscraper in Dubai, was painted in the tricolor on a Russia Day. Looks spectacular. And then we have Dmitry Medvedev. The UK's Foreign Secretary cleverly has stated that Ukraine has the legitimate right to project force beyond its borders to undermine Russia's ability to project force into Ukraine itself. According to him, legitimate military targets beyond Ukraine's border are part of its self-defense. The goofy officials of the UK, our eternal enemy, should remember that within the framework of the universally accepted international law, which regulates modern warfare, including the Hague and Geneva Conventions, with their additional protocols, their state can also be qualified as being at war. Today the UK acts as Ukraine's ally, providing it with military aid in the form of equipment and specialists, i.e., de facto is leading an undeclared war against Russia. That being the case, any of its public officials, either military or civil, who facilitates the war can be considered as a legitimate military target. And that is so classic Medvedev. Now that was his post on Telegram. And then there's the comment here. Medvedev, any British official can be considered a legitimate target for Russia since the country is at de facto war with Russia. The Deputy Chairman of the Russian Security Council responded to the British Foreign Secretary about Ukraine's right to attack Russian territory. Today the UK acts as an ally of Ukraine, providing it with military aid in the form of equipment and specialists, which means that it is de facto waging an undeclared war against Russia. Well, I cannot understand what is the story with the UK, but they are, it seems to me, they are dead set on getting into a fight with Russia. And then we get to the memes. Now this one is applicable for social media guys that has this flag in their profiles. The international symbol for, you are about to read a really stupid tweet. I had to smile when I got that one. And this one contains a lot of food for thought. Sometimes you gotta feed people some bullshit just to see who they run back and tell. And that is actually very, very true. And then this meme is just a graphic, and look at it and think about it. I like that graphic, it was well done. And then we get to this meme, and who can remember or who can forget Ursula van der Crazy with her stupid statement that the Russians are stripping fridges and washing machines for chips to keep their aeroplanes going and to make missiles. And there is this photograph of all that German tanks and American vehicles and things blown apart by the Russians. And it says, microchips from destroyed German tanks will be used in dishwashers and washing machines in Russia. And the next meme is a little bit more serious. And on the left hand you see the photographs under the heading Middle East with us, when the US intervenes in the Middle East. And look at that, US airstrikes tears the countries apart, US supplied weapons divide countries, US loots grain, oil and gold from the region, versus the Middle East without the US. When Middle East decides its own future, Iran's embassy reopens in Saudi, Iran to form a naval alliance with the Gulf states including Saudi Arabia, Syria returns to the Arab League after 12 years. I have said it many times, the Americans better pack their bases up there in the Middle East and take them home. Their time of meddling in the Middle East is over. If they don't do it, they're going to run out there at night only in their underwear. They will flee as they did from Afghanistan. And this is just something to take note of. I saw it and I laughed and I thought I have to share it. Kim vows to hold hands with Putin. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un marked Russia Day on Monday by pledging to hold hands firmly with Russian President Vladimir Putin and offering his full solidarity and support. KCNA state media outlet quoted Kim calling for closer strategic cooperation with Moscow, in conformity with the common desire of the people of the two countries to fulfill the grand goal of building a powerful country. Strange bedfellows. And then we've got this, a little bit sad. Putin praises dear friend Berlusconi. Putin and Berlusconi had apparently a very good relationship. The Russian President Vladimir Putin called Italy's Silvio Berlusconi a dear person, a true friend, and an outstanding politician in a tribute to the former Prime Minister who died on Monday, aged 86. And then we have this. This is something that must make the Westerners think. Putin decided to strike at the heart of Western values. A bill on the prohibition of sex reassignment surgery has been submitted to the State Duma of Russian Federation. An exception is possible only for the treatment of congenital anomalies in children. If the junkies at the US Justice Department could come up with a more anti-Russian sanctions, they would impose them now. The problem, however, is that they already have all the possible ones in place. While in the empire of evil, hormonal drugs and sex reassignment surgeries are actively imposed on children from the first grade, after which the normal psyche of the child can be simply forgotten. In Russia, they decided to fight these Satanists with a direct ban on such perversion. Therefore, the flow of those wishing to save their children and move to Russia in the near future will only increase, because in the United States, to be saved from these Satanists is quite problematic. And interesting enough, I have contact with people that has moved from Europe, from the EU to Russia, and both of the couples told me they did it primarily for the sake of their children. When they saw the books that the children brought back home from school, and they saw all that sexual stuff in there, they decided, time to go. And they are over the moon and happy in Russia. And then we have this post from the Proud Elephant. Just in, FBI documents confirm that Joe Biden is indeed the big guy and received millions of dollars in criminal bribery scheme. Lock him up and throw away the key. It is for me amazing. They have all this information and documents and what, and no action. And then we get to this one. Prof. Peter Blanche wrote about this history. In the late 80s and early 90s, the WEF was searching for ANC officials living in exile camps and integrated them already at that time into our community. And there's Mandela on the picture. Now that is something that ANC members specifically must take note of. Your leadership is in the same team as the DA. They've got the same masters, the WEF. And then we get to this, and I was absolutely furious when I read it. The WEF wants AI to rewrite the Bible and create correct religions. In a few years, there might be religions that are actually correct. Just think about a religion whose holy book is written by AI. What the fuck is that? I'm just wondering, how far are we, the ordinary people, going to allow these guys to go? How far? Think about that. And to end, this is one for the guys. Look at this. This image is, for me, it tells a story. Yeah, it's a beautiful girl, and that I will not deny. But I see images like this and I think about the photographers that do it, and I wonder to myself, what inspired them to do something like that? In a photographic salon competition, this would typically be entered under glamour. But, forget the technicalities, it's a great looking girl. And with that, please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Thank you for your support.